Construction workers use various tools while building. It's impossible to build a house with just one tool because every tool is suited for different tasks and situations. Now I want you to imagine what tools activists might use during a social movement. They might garner signatures for a petition, or take part in a demonstration, or boycott businesses. Every generation of activists finds ways to make their voice heard, and with every generation of activists comes new technologies. During the Progressive Era, photography was used to document the wrongful conditions of child labor. During the Civil Rights Movement, activists like Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X used TV to spread their message across the United States. And in the United States, and in our generation, social media has been used to establish transnational solidarity. Clicktivism has found a way to be resilient when traditional news avoids covering controversial topics or misrepresenting a movement. Online activism, or clicktivism, is slowly becoming the preferred method of political expression for Gen Z. But the effectiveness of any tool lies in understanding the capabilities and limitations. Good morning, AEP community. I'm Spencer Hooker, your local community activist. And like many of you, I use social media more than I like to admit. Today I hope to teach you about the importance of clicktivism and how to properly use it. While clicktivism can be effective at fostering conversations and garnering support and covering underreported issues, it can also silence the voices we aim to amplify or divert attention away from the messages we hope to spread. My goal for today is for you to all walk away with a better understanding of what clicktivism is, how clicktivism has been used in the past, how to avoid falling into performative clicktivism, and how to properly deploy clicktivism tactics in the future. To begin, let's define clicktivism. Clicktivism is the use of social media, social buttons, and similar low-threshold activities. It arrived in the early 90s with activists engaging in emailing masses to educate and mobilize on social issues. But it wasn't until the rise of social media that we saw widespread participation in clicktivism. I'm fairly certain that everyone in this room has used clicktivism in some way, you just might not have known it. There are 5 key features to clicktivism. 1, it's a political act situated in the digital sphere, like using Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. 2, it's an impromptu response to an existing political object. Actions like liking, sharing, and retweeting can happen within seconds. 3, the act is non-committal. It requires no further commitment to the campaign following the initial actions. 4, it draws on no specialized knowledge. And 5, the actions are easily replicated by the general public. Clicktivism can be more loosely defined as an impulsive and non-committal online political response, which is easily replicated and requires no specialized knowledge. This seems like a very harsh description for someone giving a TED Talk on the subject, but many movements in the 21st century have actually started through clicktivism because it was easily accessible and helped mobilize people. The idea of covering underreported issues started with Iran citizens. The hashtag CNN failed and hashtag Iran election went hand in hand by Twitter users as they documented how CNN and other major news corporations failed to report on a people's uprising. Instead of covering a revolt of people against the unjust system, CNN was running stories on the disappearance of analog television and the bankruptcy of Six Flags Amusement Park. CNN prioritized local, business-oriented stories over a significant international event with broader social and political implications. At the same time, BBC correspondents were being arrested while covering mass protests. ABC News correspondent Jim Sciutto reported his equipment being confiscated during one of these protests. But this is where clicktivism resilience takes full effect. Sciutto used his cell phone to capture the police violence directed towards protesters, posting live updates on Twitter. Within a few weeks, Sciutto and other foreign journalists were rounded up and sent home. Some journalists were imprisoned indefinitely. But there was a shift in the global media ecology as Iranian citizens continued posting videos and images online. Companies like CNN, the New York Times, The Guardian, and the LA Times created news sections on their websites for amateur videos from the Iranian citizens. For the first time in clicktivism history, major news corporations relied on tweets and online submissions to get information about what's happening. The longest clicktivist campaign that we've seen in our generation has been the Black Lives Matter movement. It started as a hashtag, but has since become a broader signifier of ideas, feelings, and movement. The hashtag no longer just stands for the death of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, who it was originally intended for, but instead signifies a recognition of past and future Black victims of police brutality. The introduction of the internet has restructured the possibilities for the Black community to challenge racist narratives in the mainstream media. Instead of having to produce and disseminate information for a small set of journalists, activists can now just use social media to get their message across to the public sphere. Activists no longer have to appeal directly to print and news media. They can distribute their messages more broadly. When stories like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor were picked up by major networks in 2020, activists formed counter-network publics to drive anti-racist narratives into the mainstream conversation. Similar to the historically offline Black public sphere, this act of resilience ensured the reframing of dominant discourse in the media and advanced racial justice. Hashtags on Twitter serve as a banner which people could share stories, affirm experiences, and challenge racist mainstream discourse. We see hashtags used similarly with the hashtag #MeToo movement, which started as a phrase on MySpace but gained significant traction when it was used as a hashtag in 2017. Hashtag #MeToo was founded by Tarana Burke to support survivors of sexual violence. But following the sexual assault allegations of Harvey Weinstein, the movement gained significant virality. In China, hashtag #MeToo was banned on social media platforms because it was seen as a Western idea. But netizens used hashtag #RiceBunny, which translates to sound like Me Too. While the West focused discussion on Hollywood and workplace sexual harassment, China's Me Too movement centered around higher education harassment with prominent professors targeting students. In France, they used hashtag Balance ton porc, which translates to speak on your pig. Through connected online action that moved to physical demonstration, France started to take sexual harassment more seriously, and a law was passed in 2019 that punishes sexual harassment in the street with fines of up to 750 euros. Netizens around the world continue to participate in the movement today, and discussions surrounding cultural norms are being had in the media. Even though I just listed multiple ways clicktivism has been used effectively, scholars have been highly critical over the use of clicktivism. Its conception was in the late 20th century, and some have referred to it as slacktivism, armchair activism, or hashtag activism. I personally think that critics underestimate and overcriticize the importance of clicktivism. This tool, like any other tool, has weaknesses, but once we understand these weaknesses, we begin to use it more effectively. So what are the criticisms of clicktivism? First, people tend to replace physical or financial participation with digital participation. Instead of attending a protest or boycotting a business, clicktivists will use their digital voice, which is helpful for spreading messages like where a protest will take place or what business to boycott. But there needs to be more substance to their actions. Change won't come from just spreading messages. It comes from undertaking those messages. It comes from the disruption. Another notable limitation of clicktivism is misinformation. Misinformation travels far and wide on social media. Researchers from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology found that fake stories were 70% more likely to be retweeted on Twitter, and that false news traveled to about 1,500 people 6 times faster. The longer we scroll, the less critical we become of what we're reading, and sometimes we might share things that align with what we believe in, but misalign with the truth. Finally, the performativeness of online clicktivism. On the screen behind me, you can see what was posted by 28 million people on hashtag Blackout Tuesday. The hashtag was created by 2 Black women in Atlanta calling on only Black musicians to stop producing and promoting music for one day, demanding that people take a break from Black entertainment to educate themselves on the complexities of race in America. Now I want you all to just take a second and analyze what you're seeing. What information is this screen communicating to you? What does it convey? The answer is nothing. That's because the message was misconstrued and people took it as an opportunity to show solidarity for Black Lives Matter, only posting a black square. The people who posted under hashtag Blackout Tuesday also used the hashtags BLM and Black Lives Matter, which cluttered these feeds as well. These posts effectively silenced activists using hashtag BLM to share information and resources. Another classic case of the repercussions of poor performativeness of online activism is the hashtag #StopConey2012 movement. This movement began with a short documentary of the Ugandan cult leader and founder of the Lord's Resistance Army, Joseph Kony. In an attempt to highlight his crimes to a global audience, they used the hashtag #StopConey. But this campaign failed in my eyes. At a time when Uganda was becoming a top destination spot to visit, people started associating the country with warlords and child soldiers. The documentary also asked viewers to purchase a $30 kit as a donation to their charity, Invisible Children. This included stickers, posters, and yard signs. But the donations failed to make it to the charity, as they used that money to continue furthering the campaign across the United States. The campaign fell short of any meaningful change due to its performative nature. People didn't do anything after using the hashtag #StopConey or liking the short film on YouTube. The donations would have been helpful, but they failed to make it to any of the families that needed it. Stereotypes about both Africa and Uganda only worsened after this campaign, and the online discussion didn't amplify any Ugandan voices. So how do we effectively use this new tool? How do we avoid falling into the trap of performative clicktivism? First and foremost, try to understand the roots of a movement. Move beyond just what you learn on social media. Clicktivists tend to only understand the surface level of issues from social media posts. So using what you learn through social media to better understand what's happening will help ensure you practice what you preach. Second, don't let clicktivism be your only form of activism. Like I said at the start of the speech, a construction worker can't build a house with one tool, and a movement can't accomplish their goal only using one form of activism. We still need to sign petitions, we still need to meet other activists, and we still need to hit the streets and voice our opinions. Don't stop at clicktivism because it's the easiest form of activism. I believe at the start of a movement, clicktivism can be extremely effective at spreading a message and building community. But the longer conversations stay in the digital world with no physical world action, it loses validity. And third, amplify voices that aren't being heard. Find content creators who are part of the affected community and help them spread their message to your followers. During the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests, videos of peaceful protesters were broken up by police with tear gas and riot shields, which helped people see firsthand what's happening in the streets. Currently in Palestine, independent journalists, undeterred by traditional media limitations, are opting to use social media to share their realities. So to quickly summarize everything, while I believe clicktivism has a place in the future of activism, we can't solely rely on it to make change. We still need people to boycott businesses, attend protests, and donate to grassroots organizations. Clicktivism is also still a relatively new concept, so if you don't see yourself using it in the future or you don't fully understand it, don't sweat it. I hope this talk has helped show the resilience of clicktivism and open your imagination to wielding it, and I want to end on one more note. While social media is fast and always changing, social change is slow and it takes a lot of time. Thank you all for coming to my TED Talk.